Hello, my love. I'm at the titty department. What size boob do you wear? That was the thing that I heard so many times on my TikTok thing that I just had to mention it. I'm going to move around my little webcam because I want you to see the boys. Look how cute they all are. I love all of them, but I will be blocking them, and I didn't think about that. You can also see my notes because I have a lot to talk about because today, if you read the title of whatever I title anything, I'm going to be talking about Mob Psycho 100 and the spin-off manga series Reigen. I have a lot to say and nothing to say because I feel like everything has been said already about this series. It's really, really good, wholesome series. If you're someone who has already binged CSM, JJK, you've read a lot of other depressing and sad manga, I think you should maybe read Mob Psycho or watch Mob Psycho because it's a very wholesome, charming series. And if you watch or read One Punch Man, you know that one does a really, really good job of story building, and whereas One Punch Man is kind of more like a joke series, not necessarily a joke series, but it's more definitely of like making fun of heroic tropes and things like that, and we don't really see a lot of the seriousness between our main crew of characters. Also, if you hear any nonsense, my cat is running around the entire room because when I'm filming and I'm recording, now is the best time to try to terrorize me. But that is besides the point. Yeah, so if you want more of a series of more of a slightly serious, slightly more wholesome story, I highly recommend Mob Psycho 100 and the spin-off series Reigen. If you look to your right or left, you will see that I have a very large list of notes today, and character tropes, and I want to talk about all of the good things that is spoilers, humongous spoilers for the manga and anime. I'm going to talk less about the anime though, because if you've seen it already, Mob Psycho has had its peak already, I believe, in 2015, 2016, 2017. I don't remember when it came out, but I do know that I watched both seasons as soon as they came out, and they were all like fully available on like Crunchyroll and the other sites. You can also watch the OVAs if you haven't had enough of Mob Psycho. There are 2 OVAs, both one for season 1 and one for season 2, but if you do watch the season 1 OVA, it's basically just a retelling of the entire series of season 1, except you replace Mob with Regan. So let's get into it. Let's talk about it. So if you do want to read the manga, the anime stops at chapter 91 more or less, but I highly recommend you just start from chapter 1 because there is a little bit of a things that Studio Bones took liberty with. If you compare the manga panels to the anime screenshots of where Mob fights Teru, and I'm laughing, but it's because it's such a bizarre contrast between the scenes that happen, because when Mob realizes after he come out of his huge state of being the powerful emotions that he had, or because literally Teru choked him to where the inner beast that the question mark person lives, that's basically where Mob's psychic energy comes from. It shows how insanely powerful he is, and that is an entirely different thing that he kind of trying to shuts out of his personality. But if we read later on in the manga that they do come to terms with each other, because one of the reasons why so many spirits and psychics and other things like that are enamored kind of by Mob, because he wants to be a regular person and he can't actually emote normally because of his intense emotions and how closely tied to his psychic powers they are. And we also learn later on that the more negative emotions you harbor, the stronger you are psychic wise, and we see that a lot with Mogami and Shou's dad, that I forget what his name is, but yeah, Shou's dad is an asshole. Mogami is also kind of what would happen to Mob if he had not met all of the wonderful people that he had met. But yeah, so that is one of the reasons why he chooses not to emote, and he just tries to be a regular everyday person because he doesn't want to feel, or the reason why he does that is because we see in a flashback and we see in the manga as well that he had actually injured his little brother Risu when some bullies were targeting them, and he was kind of more free with his powers, because we see in a flashback as well in the manga anime that he has a big crush on Tsubomi, which is the school's idol. Basically, she's the popular girl, she's the it girl, she's the moment, she's the era. She is the one. However, she was quote unquote kind of friends with him, or they knew each other from high school, but they're not in the same classes in middle school, because they're in middle school. I keep forgetting because I read the Reigen spinoff series right before I started recording this, because I wanted to remember what even happened in that one. And I don't want to say that it's a forgetful story, but we do focus a lot more on Tome more than we do on Reigen, but we do see how much kind of Reigen has matured and how stronger Serizawa is and stuff like that. But that's neither here nor there. I'll talk about that a little bit later. But there's just so much to talk about with this series because I really, really love this series because, again, one is an amazing, amazing storyteller. But back to what I was talking about, if I can remember what I was even talking about, that the reason why Mob doesn't show his powers or he doesn't use them as much as he should, besides exercising and battling evil spirits or helping out other sidekicks or whatever, is because he had injured his little brother Risu during a little altercation with some bullies. But prior to that, he had shown Tsubomi his powers, but I don't think Tsubomi remembers, or she does, but she just doesn't like talk about it, because we also see in a scene, I think mid anime to early manga, where Mob gets kind of pranked by some of the schoolgirls in I'm trying to remember. Yeah, so there's this other person, I forget her name, but she's also really cool. She's like she's a part of the journalism club. So the journalism club girl saw some of Mob's powers because in the beginning, you know, or the first arc that we go through after Mob and Reigen and all that is established that he works for them, is the where we get introduced to my favorite character. One of my favorite characters is Dimple, who is a leftover evil spirit trying to become a god in the modern times of modern world, because he feel like he deserves it or whatever, but he has a very interesting complex that we see chip away as Mob gets to know him better. I realized that I haven't even told you what the series is about before I got into spoilers, so again, sorry. I'll try to do a little warning before I get into before you actually listen to the podcast episode. But Mob Psycho 100 is literally just about a middle school boy dealing with psychic powers and other things like that while just trying to be a normal person. Because you see, when you read the manga and look at the anime, none of that really gets to happen, except for very, very rarely on occasion when him and Reigen get those after exorcism trips or during some of the OVAs. Yeah, he really does try to be a regular, like, shonen anime sports person, but his stamina and his anemia and stuff like that, he really is the best boy, I feel like. I think he's a character that everyone can resonate with, because it's not that, like, when he can't emote properly, so that kind of a lot of people who are autistic or who have a kind of slow development, they also really, really like this character as well, because he's an example of them. It's really, really cool. If you're someone who's ever been a cast out or a nerd who hasn't had a lot of friends, or you feel like you can't really do the best that you can, Mob proves that otherwise, because he gets beef buff friends from the Body Improvement Club. They are all very wholesome characters, and they all very clearly care about Mob, and you can see that both in the anime and the manga. They're all very wholesome young lads, despite them looking 20 or 30, but they're all like 16, 17, and 18-year-olds, or 16 and 17, however old you are before you go. No, that's like 14, 15, 16, before you go to middle school, before you go to high school. Jesus, I don't know. But yeah, we get to see him grow as a character. We get to see him be more mature as he gains more friends, because in the beginning, it seems like, oh, he's just a loser, he's just a boy, because he doesn't have any friends, he doesn't go to any after school clubs, he just goes straight to work. And what does he work at? He works at Reigen's con man office. And I love Reigen as an introspective character, because we see after him and Mob part ways very briefly. Well, I guess not briefly, because I think it was months or weeks that they weren't talking, and that happens because we all know from the beginning where they meet that Reigen basically uses Mob to further his business, because Mob is an actual psychic, whereas Reigen is, guess what? A fraud. Exactly. But he's a sexy fraud, and a fraud with a heart, because he actually does care about the kids, because we see in a later story, not really a story arc, but a later episode, where these college fucks just want to take a spirit photo. And a spirit photo is when you take well, I'm not sure even, I thought you had to use special camera for it, but apparently you don't. But it's basically when you go to a haunted location or somewhere that has a lot of spiritual energy, or that is known to be haunted, you go and you take a photo there, and you can see a little, like, orbs, or you see a face, or you see something spooky behind you, basically. But that happens to them. They see a face, and they're like, oh, we don't feel cool, we don't feel comfortable, so we want to exorcise it. Until they come again later in the series, and then they want to exorcise it, and Mob realizes that the spirits aren't even evil, and Reigen realizes that both to Mob, because he has grown up, and there's always been spirits around him, or that he has been able to see them, that they are both of equal value to him. Because the spirits aren't evil, he doesn't want to exorcise them, and that's totally normal, that's totally fine, because Dimple tries to, what's her do? He tries to provoke the man up, because it's a family basically. What the spirits are, there's a mom and dad and a kid, and he tries to provoke the dad into becoming an evil spirit. But because he still has such a pure of heart, dumb of ass, he cannot become an evil spirit, and he refuses to do so. And so Reigen realizes this, and then he's like, "Oh shit, I shouldn't force him to do this." And then he just sends off the kids that way. But I really, because I love and both dislike Reigen. One, for him using Mob, because Mob is such a very, I don't want to say naive character, but he doesn't really know. To this day, he still calls Reigen a good person, because despite everything, he does have Mob's best interest at heart usually. But we see later on, after they part ways, that Mob does realize he was using him, because Mob does eventually gain friends and he gains trust and things like that. Teru eventually, after they fight, and Mob is like, Teru's like, "I'm the main character, you're just a side character in all this story." But he realizes that there are, because the funny thing about this series is that, unlike Saiki K, and if you haven't seen Saiki K, definitely recommend watching that. I don't want to say it's in the same, I guess it would kind of be in the same category, where it's kind of like psychic comedy, mysterious relief, because it is more of a comedic series than Mob is, but Mob has slightly more serious tones, where we see Mob come out of his shell. We see Reigen realize that, oh shit, I am nothing without Mob. I am a fraud, and he realizes that he is a fraud. And he also has a lot of character growth, because he realizes that, and he says that in his own spin-off series when he talks to Tomei, because Tomei, also best girl. I love Tsumomi as a character, but we don't really get to see a lot of her. Tomei is someone who is obsessed, and we also see, I think, in the second or third episode of the anime, we get to see her really shine in this series. And a lot of people, and the one thing that I do love about the Mob Psycho fandom is that everyone has their specific side character that they really, really love. Like, a lot of people really like Takanaka, but we only literally see him for one episode in the manga. We only see him in one episode in the manga, but he does come back later on, I think in Tomei's telepathy arc that we get. And I think that is one of the best chapters in the manga, because you really, really do get to see how much these kids care for each other, but also just how much Takanaka really did want to believe that the telepathy club was a telepathy club, because they basically just fart around and are kind of an occult club. If you've seen if you've seen the first episode of Jujutsu Kaisen, I guess this is like a running theme that some middle schools / high schools have occult clubs where they do spooky things. That is kind of what that telepathy club is in Mob Psycho 100. But yes, the reason why I think I even mentioned Saiki K is because if you want something, again, lighthearted, and you want something that's enjoyable and not going to break your heart and rip your heart into shreds like Chainsaw Man or Jujutsu Kaisen is, definitely recommend Saiki K and Mob Psycho 100. Very nice relief. What was I even talking about? I don't even remember. But yes, so Mob gains friends and things like that out over the course of season 1 and season 2, because he joins the Body Improvement Club, rejects the Telepathy Club. But because of the Body Improvement Club being the nice chads that they are, wonderful, amazing himbos, I love all of them. They are all sweeties. You get to know more about them in the manga if those are your favorite characters. But yeah, everyone has a favorite side character, and I think my favorite one is the journalism girl, I think, and Tomei, because Tomei is just one of those. If you're someone who likes the shonen genre, you frequently get gutted because your favorite female characters don't really ever get utilized, or they don't ever get their own story arcs, and it's really kind of shitty. We don't really get to see the motivations. But even though, I've read something as well before, but maybe I'll talk about it when I actually do, because I am in the following order. I am going to talk about Mushishi next. After I finish the series, I'm going to talk about Chainsaw Man, the revival of the shonen genre, Jujutsu Kaisen as well, and Dorohedoro, after I get my Ibisu sweater, because I did order one from Redbubble, and she is one of my favorite characters as well. I didn't know that she was literally 13. I thought she was older. But I love her. She's such a good character. Kyuhei Yoshida is an amazing, amazing artist and storyteller, because I think we really, really, if you really want a fun, dark, and if you want a fun, dark series full of gore about the power of friendship, highly, 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 cannot highly recommend enough Dorohedoro. If you've seen season 1 and you want more of it like I did, I 100% recommend you read the manga. It is available online. You can also buy English volumes. They even have the art book. You can also buy limited edition merch from eBay sellers. I'm really, really sad that I missed the official like merch drops for everything because I read everything so late. But back to Mob Psycho. So let's talk about, after I've like said all that I've said, let's talk about the rest, what the rest happens in the manga, because after the end of season 2, I believe, we see the Mogami arc, we see the I'm trying to remember if the Mogami arc is in season 1 or season 2, because I always forget, and I should look it up, but I'm not gonna look it up. But we see that after the okay. So I think the Mogami arc is in season 1, because in season 2, our protagonist is Shou's dad. And if we don't know who Shou is our redheaded little demon child who is trying to take down his dad, because his dad literally wants to put an end to the entire world, because he thinks that he should be only sidekicks should rule the world, because anyone who isn't is a puny, insignificant ant, and he's very much on a power trip. But much like Mogami doesn't really want to... Mogami wants to punish everyone. He feels like everyone who doesn't use their power to become the most strongest is weak and whatever. But Shou's dad is just an asshole. We see that he separated from his mom after Shou's mom was like, you're doing too much, you're being evil and stuff. And Shou's mom stresses her not disappointment, but she's really sad. It's kind of like when we see in what the fuck is this series called? And it's a big one, but I always forget. My Hero Academia, when what is his name? I forget his name, but I love him as well. The little emo kid, the Ice Fire kid's mom realizes that he can use the fire powers, and she reminds him so much of his dad. She gives him a scar. Very traumatizing, very sad for my little fire kid boy. But again, I'm a little tired. I'm a little tired of the shonen drama, and I think that's why I'm leaning more towards the darker psychological stuff. Like, I really want to read Orgasmi Pon, but also I'm not prepared for the psychological damage it's going to do to me. But I think I'm a little bit tired out, because Chainsaw Man, I think, is such a good story and such a good... And you're like, oh, everyone's talking about it. Everyone's talking about it for a reason, because it really, after like the Naruto's and the Dragon Ball and the other series, I feel like with every like new season of anime that we get, we do get like the kind of shonen one, because, you know, shonen never really dies. But with JJK and Chainsaw Man and Dorohedoro, it kind of feels like a revival of a true, and I don't want to say like there's a true and there's a fake, but just from like an American and Western standpoint, we already see so much like action and stuff like that in Marvel movies and in TV shows, because there's always a superhero TV show and there's always a superhero movie coming out. We really don't get into like kind of the complex character arcs or like the complex character things that people have. Like in JJK, we see that okay, so Gojo is the white-haired one, and then Geto is the one that has the long hair and things like that. We kind of see his fucking Joker arc, where he thinks that anyone who isn't a sorcerer is scum because they can't exercise, and the reason that we have curses in that world is because of people who are non-sorcerers. So he becomes a cult leader. That's a complex character motivation, I feel like. Whereas like people who are like Iron Man and Captain America, and it's not that like I can't get behind it, but I feel like it's not for me, you know. And I feel like and I don't want to say like, oh, anime is so deep, because obviously there's things like Salsa at Work that talk about the biology. There's Saiki, who's just psychic comedy relief show. There is Azumangdayo and Yotsuba and other things that are just there for like slice of life comedic relief. But with things again like CSM and JJK and even Mob Psycho, there are layers to it, and we have interesting character motivations, and we kind of have, I think what also helps is that we have a lot of more world building, whereas like, okay, here's another example. In The Incredibles, we see that a lot of what is it called? There's like hero insurance agencies, and we see that the more kind of you damage the area, the like more you get taxed, and how dangerous it is to have superheroes and things like that. So superheroes were kind of outlawed. That's an interesting world building thing, and I think like the world of Mob Psycho, where it's like there aren't and are famous sidekicks, and if you aren't registered with like the psychic organization, you're a fraud and stuff like that. and there's specific sorcerer schools, and it's like a Harry Potter thing in JJK, but not really, because they're edgy wizards. But that's neither here nor there, because I haven't even gone to things I want to talk about, and I'm already 20 minutes in. But there's just a lot of comparisons, I think, that can be drawn between the shonen genre and Western hero things, and then there's a reason why I'm really not into those, and I love the world building of these ones. Because it's kind of like why people still make essays to this day about the world building and about the things that went on in Naruto, because Naruto's not the ninja president, but he never really did anything about the Hyuga clan weird slavery thing. He said he has all these empty promises, and he's never home. And then we also have Sasuke, who's like a Shadow Hokage, and there's just so many things that go unanswered in like ninja society, and I feel like it should be addressed and it should be talked about. But again, that's like, I don't know, I feel like the lack of world building in Naruto kind of turned me away from the series, because I finished Shippuden and I finished Naruto, but I don't think I'm ever going to touch the manga. But I will revisit it, I think, because there was someone who commented on one of the podcast episodes where I talk about it, because I was very kind of disappointed in the lack of Sakura's character in Shippuden, and then kind of how they do a disservice to her in Boruto, the anime series. But she is a more fleshed out character, I believe, in the manga and in interviews and things like that. Kishimoto says that he is a big fan of her, but I don't know. That I'll talk about it, I guess, in another episode. But let's finally talk about the things that I want to talk about, and this might be a little bit of a longer episode, and that's fine, because there's just so much I could say about Mob Psycho, because it is very much a series that's near and dear to my heart, and I feel like kind of motivates me to be the person that I want to be, because if Mob can do it, I can do it. So let's talk about the arcs that happened in the manga. Yeah, because the anime stops at about chapter 91, thanks to the Mob Psycho fandom wikia for doing all of the hard work for me. So the Divine Tree, the Hypnosis, and Dimple, and also Serizawa is there, because I forget about my boy. So the Divine Tree arc, immediately after Shou's dad and Mob battle out and they fight, right? We see this giant, quote unquote, divine tree. But really, it's just a broccoli, because Mob had this seeds in his shirt that was left over from the previous thing that they did when they went to go exercise that like earth angry man spirit from the person's farm. That I think was a really it happens pretty fast. What happens is that everyone becomes enamored with the tree, and then we have all these different cults claiming that the tree should be theirs. Like we have, I think, there's like 4 different ones, but there's also the psycho helmet one, and that's the one that's basically based around Mob, but Mob is never gonna go say that he was the one. And there was supposed to be a meeting between him and the journalism girl, because he was supposed to say, hey, like, it's me, and he was basically, I think, gonna tell them to stop or something, because it's weird. Hold on, let me take a drink of water. I don't think there's any water in this, but I have hiccups for whatever reason, because I've been inhaling air. Jesus. Okay. Hopefully that'll help a little bit. I don't like talking with hiccups. It's really, really annoying. So what happens then is that before he even gets to meet it, there's so many weird things and weird circumstances that happen. Minageshi, I think is his name. He's the, what is it called? He works at a floral shop now, but he was the Esper who could use what is it called? Like plant telepathy, because he fights with plants. And he was trying to reject the roots, but the divine tree has grown so powerful now that it literally sucks up all his psychic energy and he passes out. And now the people who do use a divine tree, they're basically like cutting off parts of it and using it to brainwash all of the rest of the cities in the encompassing area. There's like water, like it has even gotten into the water system to where even if you drink the water, you're kind of like, ooh, divine tree, that's all I think about. And then you go towards the tree, and the tree basically sucks up your energy. But that is the gist of what happens in that one. And basically what they're doing, there's like chocolates and food and everything, like everything has pieces of the divine tree in it, and so nearly everyone is manipulated except for who? Our best boy Mob. And when we go with Mob to the tree and he enters it, because everyone's like, oh, you're a fraud, even Tsubomi's there, literally everyone's there, and they're all under the hypnosis of the divine tree, we realize Who is it? Our favorite bastard man, Dimple. Because Dimple always had that hidden motivation of using Mob to become the new god, because Mob is so powerful he could bend anyone's will. But again, Mob is not that kind of person. He's just a boy who wants to live a normal life. But that's not what happens. That's not what ever happens. So what happens after that? There's so much that happens in this series, and I've also read so much other stuff that I don't even remember what happens, but it's such a good... I think this is my favorite arc because we really do realize how much Mob and Dimple have an effect on each other, because Mob is just, using his powers and stuff like that, but Dimple's like, oh, use it more, but Mob is like, no, I'm not like that, I'm not like you. They fight. Teru was also there. Teru went to go investigate first, but because Dimple manipulated him and used him, Mob just blew him out of the tree because he didn't want to hurt Teru, because Teru was his friend. And so Mob and Dimple battle it out, and they try to come to eye to eye, and they realize that how they affected each other, how they changed each other, and how wrong Dimple was to try to use this to make a name for himself, because again, it's not even him, it's Mob. Mob was the one who had a major effect behind the tree, and he realizes that. And after they battle out, they try to exit the tree, but now, because of all the energy poured into the tree is now sentient, and it thinks for itself, and it tries to eat Mob for his psychic energy. But Dimple uses the last of his energy to battle it and to literally take it to space. And then we don't see Dimple for, I think, the next 2 arcs, but he does come back in the end because Mob believes in him so much, and because they have such a good relationship, Dimple is able to regenerate. You know how, and that, I don't know, it really, the power of friendship and the power of, understanding one another. And because, and the reason why, I guess it's so important to me and why I love this series so much is because of the close interpersonal relationships I have with people online and offline, and how much truly caring about someone can affect everything else that's going on. But I really, really loved that part of the story, because you really get to see Dimple actually change and not stay an asshole like he is, even if he is a little shithead. Being with Mob has actually changed him. And then we get to our little mini arc, and I don't know if it's a big, but it's the end of the year, right? And not the end of the year, but we see a change of heart in Tomei, and she's like, you know what? It's my last year. I'm done with this. I'm gonna try to actually find things that I love to do, and the telepathic club's a joke and stuff, and the Peach Boy and the other guy, I forget their names. But one of the Peach Boys, the round one, and the taller one, I forget his name, but I love them both. They're also great characters. I just can't remember their names. I'm sorry. But they really, really want to try to find a telepath, because they're like, oh, we really do care about Tomei. We want to give her this gift and stuff like that, and we don't know what's wrong with her. And they go to Mob and they talk about it, and Mob's like, hey, I know 2 people who can do telepathy. And it's the Square and the Round brothers. I call them in my head the Minecraft brothers. But there's also a brief thing, not a brief thing, but if you read the... Oh my god, I'm so stupid. I keep saying the same thing. But there are a group of characters, or I want to say minor, but they also do play a big thing in there, but we really don't get to see any updates on them after this part. This is, I think, where we barely see any of them, because they were basically... There's this billionaire's son who wants psychic powers, and he does psychic research, and he found this group of kids, or they came to him because he does online advertisings and in-person advertising, things like that, and if he knows you have psychic powers, he's like, yo, come to the research lab. And there's the girl who has clairvoyance, the one who can do fire, the one who can pin spoons, and then the Minecraft brothers who can communicate to each other telepathically. And so Mob's like, yo, Minecraft brothers, let's see if we can find a telepath. And so they all go to the room, and then Mob uses because Mob has an entire humongous amount of psychic energy, and the Minecraft brothers don't have a lot of output because they can't really find other telepaths. They can only talk to each other. And so they make a very, very loud signal. They make the loudest signal possible so that any telepath or anyone who has psychic powers will visit the room if they do. And we see our returning boy Takanaga, who joined the tennis club, and he's like, what's going on? Da, 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 da. And then he's like, oh, Takanaga, we're trying to find psychics. And they make the noise again, and then he's like, shut that shit off. And then we get to learn that the reason why Takanaka even joined the telepathy club is because he legitimately thought that they were other telepaths, because Takanaka had been hearing other people's thoughts for all over however many years he has, until now. He has developed and honed his own powers to where he can't hear anyone anymore unless he chooses to do so. He can see inside their hearts and stuff, and I think that's so cute. So then they get Tomei, and they're like, we're gonna do this fucking alien ritual, and we're gonna try to get aliens over here. And so it's him, Serizawa, and then everyone in the car. So it's the Peach Boy, the Tall Boy, Takanaka, Mob, and Tomei. So they're in there, and they're going to this peak where aliens were sighted, and they try to do the ritual. The ritual doesn't work because Takanaka found out that the person who did it was a fraud, and then Tomei's like, oh shit, I wasted my New Year's plans for this. She probably wasn't going to do anything anyway. Tomei doesn't have a lot of girlfriends. But they end up trying to do it anyway. Mob gives a lot of his energy to Takanaka. I don't remember if the Minecraft brothers are there. I don't know if they are. I don't think they are. No, they're not. But this is why you should read the manga, so you can not listen to me babble about what even happens in there. But this is such a good story because we see that Takanaka actually did care enough he cared so much that he really read all of the books because he knew how much Tomei cared about finding aliens with her freak ass. So they blast the big energy thing to say, aliens, where are you bitches? And guess what? Aliens come, and they have a little bonding thing. They go into the new year, and they all get gifts from the aliens, and the aliens they gift exchange with the aliens. And I think the more interesting part is that the aliens kind of look like Tsubomi, except they have like little gray alien bodies. So is Tsubomi an alien confirmed? I don't know, but I read a little theory about that on Tumblr forever ago during the height of the series, and I was very, very intrigued. I was like, is she a fucking alien? I don't know. But I think that was such a good thing, because I think the reason why I loved it so much is because we see how much the characters care about each other, and then we really get to see how much Takanaka actually invested in the telepathy club, despite them not even being real psychics or not even being real telepaths. But he's a softie at heart, and I think that's really cute, and I love that for them. There's also an omake where we see that the Peach Boy ended up living with the aliens for 5 days, and he cried every day because he wanted to go back home. This is the second to last thing that happens. This is the last thing that happens in the manga before we get our goodbye to everyone. And it is the time to talk to Tsubomi arc. And it is so sad, and it is so heartbreaking. And it is not heartbreaking in the way that you think it is. Mob finally decides because he realizes that Tsubomi is going to a different school, and he really doesn't know what he wants to do. He doesn't know what middle school he wants to go, or high school he doesn't want to go to. Doesn't really have a lot of motivation, or he doesn't have a specific hobby that he does, because he talked to the body improvement himbos, and they're like, yeah, I'm going to be a mangaka. Oh, I draw. Oh, I'm going to go to chef school. I'm going to go to farming school because there's a high school near where I live, and I'm going to take over the farm. And Mob is like, I guess everybody knows what they want to do. And then he finds out that Tsubomi is actually going to a different high school, and she's moving away and things like that. And he's like, oh, I gotta confess. Now it's fucking go time. And so they set a date and everything like that. And he gives her a call, and he's like, hey, like, let's meet up on this day before, because I know you're moving away. And she's like, oh, okay, totally. And he picks up flowers and everything like that. And we even get to see him in Negishi again, because he gives him a better bouquet. But before we even get to the park, before we even get to see our boy confess to Tsubomi, our queen idol alien girl, Mob saves a child from getting hit by a car, but he ends up getting hit by the car himself, and he goes unconscious. And then we see our fucking question mark boy, and he is pissed. So like violent earthquakes happen, tornadoes, storms, and the ground is shaking and things are breaking, and there's warnings to evacuate and stay safe and stay in shelter. And during this whole time everyone's blowing up Tsubomi's phone, and they're like, go home, what are you doing? And she's like, no, like, I'm waiting for him, I know he's gonna show up, like, just give him time, like, I'll be home eventually, nothing's happening in my area, da da da. And so we see, even though they don't have much of a friendship or relationship, she's still waiting for him to come, and everyone tries to stop but we see Teru trying to find him, and again Teru gets his clothes stripped away. I think he gets a new haircut again, and he gets flown away. I don't know if we see Shou. I don't remember if we see Shou. But Risu also tries to stop him. We even see Serizawa and Reigen try to stop him, and Reigen even confesses that he apologizes for everything that he's put Mob through, because he knows that at the end of the day he's a fraud and stuff. And something awakens within Mob, and Mob starts to try to internally fight with the question mark person, because they're both inside the same vessel, just the same person. And we see Mob slowly get eradicated, or like the question mark is with taking over overtaking. We see during the internal battle with question mark guy and Mob that Mob is slowly disintegrating, and question mark person is taking over, and they have a lengthy discussion about the things that they want, and how Mob is ashamed of his powers and he never uses his powers, but the powers are what has given him friendships and quote unquote fame, and can even help Tsubomi like him and stuff like that. And the question mark thing is just really laying on all of the insecurities that Mob has had. And then Mob was like, no, da, 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 da. But they eventually, I think they end up accepting each other, and Mob is able to come too, and he goes to talk to Tsubomi. We don't get to see the confession, which I think is a little sad, but it's okay because we get to see the aftermath. Tsubomi rejects Mob ultimately, and Mob doesn't try again. He is not angry. He's more sad than anything, and we see him sobbing and stuff like that. And that ends our last arc of the story before we get our good ending, where we get to see Risu, Mob, Tomei, Shou, and everyone. It's so good because we get to see like Tomei's in high school, and Shou is bald now, and Risu is VP of the student council, and Mob is VP of the body improvement club. And everyone's there for Reigen's birthday, because if you remember, briefly, when Mob and Reigen part ways, when everything goes to shit and Reigen gets drunk off of one drink and throws it up immediately, that day was Reigen's birthday, and only his mom told him happy birthday, and then she sent him a job application to go apply for another office job. But unlike that year, it is a new year, and Serizawa and all of the kids and everyone from the body improvement, not everyone from the body improvement, everyone from the telepathy club, Takanaka's there, all of the kids are there, and they wish him a happy birthday. And that is the end of the manga, and it is such a good, wholesome ending. I just love it so much because everything gets wrapped up in a tidy ending, and unlike other series where we're kind of left questioning what happens, we get an answer nearly to everything that happens. And I think that's just such a good wrap up, and I really, really wish we would get a season 3, because I feel like we more than have enough for season 3. Even if they wanted to include some filler, that would be really nice, because I think our boys go through so much. It would be nice to have them have a beach episode, or have them go to do whatever the fuck they want to do. And I think I kind of talked about this a little bit briefly, but how to talk about character tropes, because I tried to look up what a character trope is, and I really didn't get the answer that I wanted. But Mob is definitely our failed sports anime protagonist. And again, if you see my fucking notes, you can already kind of read what I'm going to talk about. But I think I'll probably expand more about like Risu and Teru and Shou, because those are kind of my favorite boys. I love them. But yeah, Mob is our failed sports anime protagonist because he so badly wants to be able to be strong and be tough and be rough. But he just is off baby boy at the end of the day. Risu wants to be the main character, and he thinks that everything he's doing is just and right, because he gets his own little villain arc when he assists the other VP, I think, or the president in like planting evidence to get rid of the delinquents in the school, quote unquote. And it's basically giving them all a bad reputation and planting evidence, which is not good. And that's how he actually gets his psychic powers, because as I've said previously, the reason how you get your powers in this world is that you have a lot of high emotions or strong emotions, and negative emotions can give you a higher psychic energy output. as Dimple. Dimple explains it a lot better than I did in there, but I feel like I kind of did justice. But that's how Risu realizes he has powers, and Shou tells him he could possibly be even more powerful than Mob, but I don't think that's true. But yeah, he really wants to have psychic powers. He's very envious of his brother for having them, but again, Mob always admired Risu because Risu is just very headstrong. Everyone's in love with him. He's super smart. He's very strong. He's talented, and Mob is not. But they both love each other despite their nonsense that they go through. And I think Risu even tries to fight Mob at one point in one of the episodes and in the manga, but clearly it doesn't go well because Mob doesn't want to fight. Mob is not a fighter. We know that. We've seen that. We know our sweet baby boy isn't. Teru, I think, has the best introduction to the series because he is the Bancho, which is basically the like hidden leader in the school system, and he beat up the delinquents of Mob's middle school, and they're like, yo, we gotta beat him up. And they try to get the himbos of the Body Improvement Club to go beat everyone up because they quote-unquote kidnapped Mob, and so they do beat up everyone up, but then Teru comes and he destroys and bodies everyone, and then he realizes that Mob is a psychic, and he's like, oh, I gotta beat you right now because I'm the main character. I'm the moment. He's not the moment. Eventually, our question mark person comes out, and Teru realizes the awful mistake he made, and the whole school gets destroyed. Everything gets uplifted to the sky. And then again, like I said earlier, Mob realizes what he's done and puts everything back together. But we really don't get to see the gravity of actually how he feels because he doesn't like using his powers for bad things or to hurt people. That's the main thing. He doesn't want to use them against people. He doesn't love hurting anyone, and he realizes the gravity of the situation and just sobs. And I wish that would have translated better in the anime because it's such a heavy scene, and I feel like we truly get to feel how Mob feels and where his morals lie. My baby boy Shou is like a hero, anti-hero, whatever, because he's trying to fight his dad, but he's not as strong as his dad, but he doesn't also realize how strong his dad really is because his dad has nearly like telepathy, clones, give people energy, weather. His dad is has way too powerful. Like if there were like an end villain or there were like two like major bosses, it would be like Megami and Shou's dad because they are just insane. I really wish we would see more of Shou, but I guess Shou was supposed to be not necessarily a throwaway character, but a character we don't really get to see a lot about because we see Teru everywhere, right? Teru is like obsessed with Mob. He's just, I guess after he transformed his character, he's just, that's my boy, you know? But we don't get to see a lot of Shou, and the reason why I liked seeing Shou towards the end of the original Mob Psycho 100 manga series is because he's bald, and we see him still talk to his mom, and it's just like so wholesome, and I wish we got to see more of his character, but that's okay. There was probably reasons why we didn't get to see more of him, because Mob Psycho is also chock full of characters as well that you love or dislike. Reigen, I love him, but I also hate him because he's a con man. He talks with his mouth, everything he does. If you want to see a little bit more introspective about his character, and if you can't get off him, again, I highly recommend reading Reigen, the spin-off man. We really do get to see how much he's kind of matured as a person and how he's trying to do things on his own without calling Mob, even though he still does anyway because he's a little asshole. But he's just really, really, even though he's an asshole, he does have a good heart because he does care about the kids at the end of the day. There's a brief moment between him and Tomei where he's like, your parents don't care about you, and she's like, I'll be fine. And then Teru, he's like, everyone just like come to the building, like, well, I'll be fine or whatever. And then Teru doesn't realize that his fucking apartment is wrecked. But he's one of the few people who recognizes that the kids are actually kids and they're not just psychic pawns tease. Katsuya Teruzawa, I love him so much. We get to see more of him in the Reigen thing, and he's one of the other people that a lot of the adults, teenagers are obsessed with, because he's just a good side character, I feel like, or he's just a good character in general, because we see him, and it's so sad too, because it's again like him and a Mob in a Reigen situation where Katsuya was a shut-in for 30 years because he didn't have control of his psychic powers, and so they would all lash out on him, and he was just stuck in the apartment. His mom was worried about him, and then Shou's dad gets him out of there because he's like, I have psychic powers too, and then Katsuya's like, oh my god, and then he gets manipulated by him. It's really sad because I I love him so much. But he ends up working for Reigen after the disbandment of the evil psychic corporation that Shostad was in charge of. And he's learning to rehabilitate himself into normal society, and that is what he's getting help with. And we also learn in the Reigen series that he's going to night school, and he is going to get his GED, I believe, and he's taking night classes, and he's getting friends, and he's going out with people, and I'm so happy, I'm so proud for him. But definitely resonate a lot with their character as a shut-in that has become somewhat more of a shut-in during the pandemic. And then Dimple, our ex-villain sidekick, because we really get to see him kind of transform as a character. And again, not transform a lot, but we do get to see how much being with Mob and being with Reigen and this eating evil spirits and stuff like that has kind of made him a little bit softer, and how much he actually does care about the remaining characters. Oh, now I get to talk about Reigen. Reigen is basically Tomei's story. It's only 7 chapters. It's a very, very quick read. I think Mob Psycho in its entirety, I think, is 101 chapters, or just about 100 chapters, which I think is very fitting. Tomei, again, is the best girl. We get to see her realize how she doesn't really have a lot of motivation. She's not the main character, because we see a gag character who is the main character of her own story, who has a lot going on. And she kind of forces her way into Reigen's office because she's obsessed with the occult and things like that, and she really wants to get into spirits, and she wants to become a psychic now because she knows Mob is one, and she's really kind of not necessarily obsessed with that part, but she's like, hey, I love that stuff, let me be a part of it. And Reigen's like, no, you're gonna get yourself hurt. And we realize later on in the series that's exactly what happens. Because there is another person who's into the occult, who hears Tomei is into it, and he kind of invites her to go to this weird place where they're supposed to exorcise the spirit, but the spirit is too powerful enough, and eventually that person's master, I forget what his name is, but he basically tricks. He wanted to initially trick Reigen into absorbing the evil spirit that was harboring it. Tomei actually gets it, and it is so awful, and we think she's gonna die, but she doesn't die, and we see our best man Reigen absorb the evil spirit, and then he goes and takes it back to the other evil spirit. I don't know, I'm explaining it pretty poorly, but basically what happens is that when they went to go rescue Tomei and the other weird occult kid from it, there was a evil spirit that if you turned around, it basically absorbed your energy and you would die. And that one's kind of haunting the area, and it basically can't be exorcised by people who are like at Serizawa's level. It has to be like Mob or terror level exorcists to be able to expel it. And so what Reigen does, his big brain moment, is that he takes the evil spirit that was passed to Tomei, and he goes to the place where the look behind me spirit goes, and they kind of he thought they were going to battle out. Basically what ended up happening is that the manipulating evil back behind you spirit one ate the other giant evil spirit. Very scary. Also the designs of it, amazing. Also, I would die for Katsuya Serizawa. If you haven't read that already, I love him so much. He's my favorite character. Also, yes, Reigen is still there. He just has less to do. We see that Katsuya has a bit of a busier schedule with going to night school and having friends and going out and being an amazing, regular, functioning human being. I wish I was me. Typically, there's a lot of cases that he can handle. Typically, the ones that he can handle, on occasionally in emergency. We will still see Mob. We only see him twice though in this manga because he thought he was going to be in it, but it's not. It's Tomei's story. It's Tomei and Reigen's story. Because there is a part where there is just one of Tomei's friends thought she was being stalked by a spirit, but it was just a regular person who was kind of stalking her. And Reigen found that out after Tomei dumped the entire bag of salt on his head. And that's when they have a talk about Reigen being a fraud and how Tomei shouldn't further get into it. And then, it just ends with, I forget how it ends, but it ends pretty nicely as well. And you want more of it, but you don't get more of it. And I wish they would also do an OVA for the series, because it'd be so nice to see Tomei again animated. But I give my life to Studio Bones and Yusuke Murata because they did such a great job animating everything. Done very, very well. But I love one, and I love this series so much. And if you've listened to me for 51 minutes talking and gushing about the series and knowing the spoilers, I haven't even talked about nearly everything that happens in the manga. There are so many more good moments. There are so many other awesome things that happen in the anime that if you do want to see them animated. Again, I cannot recommend this series enough. Even if you've listened to me talk about it for 15 minutes and you don't want to watch it, maybe just watch Saiki K, or maybe you're just someone who's diehard into shonen. But if you want something lighthearted, fluffy, that can relieve you from the ache that CSM and JJK left in your heart, I cannot recommend the series enough. But thank you for listening, and if you're watching, don't talk about my hair, don't comment about my hair. Please leave a like, subscribe, comment, share this episode. Follow me on Spotify. If you want to follow me on the internet, I am at Nisnosamne, ISNOSOMNIA on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter, Cecilia G on YouTube, and you can follow the podcast on Anchor, Spotify, and anywhere else podcasts are available. I am again your co-hostess with the leastest, Cecilia, and I will see you in the next episode. Thanks.